good to see everybody tonight. Thanks for coming out. I don't need to be in the picture. I don't need to be seen. My name is Kathleen Campbell, and as Janelle is still a bit on a sabbatical, I'll be serving as moderator for this event. I love the Ben Carson quote, "An educated man is a liberated man." This is so true. As we grow in knowledge, we grow in understanding, and as we grow in understanding, we grow in freedom. I pray that this forum tonight will be a tool in promoting liberty. This forum will be a little bit different than others. At the April CO2 meeting, we asked folks to write down questions that were pressing to them. Our questions will be asked based on the popularity of those topics that are important to you. Neither of the candidates have been contacted by CO2, like me or Janelle or anybody else, and neither candidates have been coached or given access to any questions that will be asked tonight. This forum will be moderated for the most part. There'll be some time at the end that you can ask questions, a few minutes toward the end. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question asked. Then there'll be a follow-up question if responses warrant more clarity. The candidates will also be offered a counter response of a minute or so if they feel the need. Joe Holcomb will be our timekeeper tonight, and at 1 minute and 45 seconds, he'll raise a yellow card.
I wanted a cowbell, but she wouldn't give me one.
This means your time is almost up. The red card means your 2 minutes is up. In this forum, we will not drill down on all the issues that are pressing, but the goal of this forum is to aid in your decision as to who you believe will best serve you in our district by contrasting these two candidates. So, any questions? Any questions from you guys? No. Okay, good.
2 minutes for response.
2 minutes. Mm-hmm. So, before we begin, we're asking Pastor Danny Parton to pray with us, and then we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Kathleen. I want to read Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. There's a lot of mourning going on. And so we want to pray and ask the Lord that the righteous may rule. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we love you. We thank you. We praise you. You're God, and there is none other, none like you. And so tonight, as we come to these two men, and they share their hearts and their goals, and Father, I pray that you will press upon our hearts exactly who needs to be our next representative here in District 4. And we're going to praise you for what you do. And that may everything be done tonight decently in order, and may you be honored. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to be sitting down over here. I'm going to be sitting over here. I don't know if you stand there. So. Oh, pledge. Yes, pledge. Thank you. Pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well first, you know what? Who has a quarter? Anyone have a quarter?
I flip a coin.
Davey, heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads it is, so you can go first. So, thank you. Well, this is all above board. This is big time here.
I didn't see that quarter, did I?
So first, before we go to the questions, each candidate gets 2 minutes just to say whatever you guys would like to say. So same rules apply, but just to introduce yourself and what you would like to say to us.
Is this on?
Mhm.
Thank you very much for being here tonight on a Monday evening. Thank you for taking your time to get engaged in the political process. It's very important that we know. Can y'all hear me? It's very important that we that you hear from us, that you ask the questions that you want to ask, and we'll do our best to answer. Matthew, thank you for being here. Thank you for your service to this great country of ours. Before we get started, my name is Davey Hiott. I think most of you know. I think most of you were here last time that I came a couple of weeks ago. I'm a lifelong resident of House District 4, born and raised here. I'm a lifelong member of the church right across the street, First Baptist Church in Pickens. Third generation business owner, Hiott Printing Company. Married for 34 years. My wife teaches Spanish at Pickens High School. She's been teaching for 21 years. I have a son and a daughter, both live in Columbia. I have 2 granddaughters that live in Columbia with my daughter, which is one of the main reasons I like to go to Columbia is I get to spend the night with my granddaughters. And that's always the highlight of the trip. And I've done just about everything you could possibly do in this district. I've served on a lot of boards. I've done community work. I've been coached rec ball, all ages. Served on the rec board. I served on every school improvement council at every school that my kids came through. I've served for the last 18 years in the State House. Last Thursday, I was elected a Republican majority leader in the State House, so now I'm the majority leader for the Republican caucus in the state of South Carolina. There's 81 Republicans in the State House, and I was elected by my colleagues to be the majority leader, and I consider that quite an honor.
That time's up.
Thank you. I'll shut up. Thank you.
Now you turn it off.
I knew it was too complicated for you to do.
Give me your time, people.
That's all right.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, welcome everybody. I appreciate you being here tonight. First of all, I want to thank Serve of the Upstate. I think it's a great grassroots organization that we need in the United States of America. Second of all, for Cafe Connections, this is a very unique place in Pickens. This is what being a rural resident in an incredible district is all about. A place where people can come, gather, eat coffee, say some prayer, put some cards down here, bring some food in. So I really appreciate Cafe Connections hosting this. We live in a constitutional republic, and we as citizens of the United States of America have the opportunity to vote who we elect and represent us in either the State House or in Congress in Washington, D.C., or in localities. That is a unique distinction in the history of the world and the current state of the world. And so what we're doing here tonight is what we're going to do for the next 28 days is determine who is the ideal candidate to lead, serve, and represent the citizens of the 4th District of South Carolina. So every day, as I've mentioned before, you need to ask yourself, who is going to represent us in the State House? The incumbent who's been here for 18 years? Or is there a better opportunity for somebody with proven leadership ability, with incredible life experiences, to serve, lead, and represent every person in this entire district? Pickens, Liberty, Dacusville, all along the Saluda River, Holly Springs, all the way up to Sassafras. That's the entire district. And when you start looking at every single metric across the board, you can come to your own conclusion. So I encourage you to look at my website, votematthewkutilek.com, my Facebook page. I'm extremely transparent. You know what my priorities are. They're listed on my board and my card. There's 5 of them. And I encourage you, if you're going to vote for me, bring 35 people with you on June 14th. Thank you.
So we've got a few questions that are kind of like just to get to know you as men. The first question will go, you'll answer first, Matthew, because Davey answered first last time, so we'll just go
Okay.
back and forth. So, using your 2 minutes, tell us your favorite quote, or one of your favorite quotes, or a quote that's meaningful to you maybe, your favorite scripture, and a little background as to why these are important to you, and one thing that you think you're really good at.
It's a great question. So I would say, first of all, on my right hand, you'll see the Citadel ring, graduated in the class of 2001. And inside there's a quote. The quote is, "Suffer if need be." It's all about service and sacrifice. The second quote, which I had engraved in there when I was in 2001 when I graduated, is Ecclesiastes 9:10. It's the very last header of my campaign video. And that verse says, whatever your hand finds to do, do with all of your might. For in the grave where you're going, there is neither knowledge nor power nor wisdom. And so I've tried to live out my entire life to give everything that I am, every single day, 100%. And I know it seems cliche, but on 5 March 2010, when I was shot by a sniper and spent 2 years going through 11 surgeries recovering from this, one of the outcomes of that was the Lord impressing upon my heart to take advantage of every single second of every single day. So I know it's going against the status quo, and I know it's not supposed to be this way, that some outsider can't run for State House. But that's not the case. I will not waste 1 second of my life while our liberties and freedoms are being destroyed at the national level all the way down to the local and city level.
Your favorite quote? Do you have a favorite quote?
It's encapsulated in Ecclesiastes 9:10, but also would be what's inside my ring, is suffer if need be.
Okay. And one thing you're really good at?
One thing I'm really good at. Well, I would like to think that I'm a decent athlete, endurance athlete.
Okay. Very good. You ready? Yep. Sam, what do you want? Are you done, Matthew?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Nothing?
Yeah.
My favorite quote, my favorite Bible verse is Colossians 3:23. Whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. That's kind of where I am in life. I have never strived to please man. It's always been to please God. Because I don't do any of this stuff by myself. I'm not a lone ranger when it comes to anything. I'm a team player. I'm a team builder. I'm a relationship kind of guy. Anybody that knows me knows that I feel pretty confident when it comes to building relationships with other people, and bringing other people with you, and deciding, hey, look, we can do this thing together. It's not me. I've never accomplished anything in Columbia, South Carolina by myself. Never. I never will. If I stay down there 40 more years, I'll never accomplish one thing on my own. It's a team sport. And so the only way you can be a part of a team sport is be a team player. And I consider myself to be a team player. I consider myself to say, look, my ideas are not always the best ideas. You bring your ideas to the table and I'll listen to them. I don't close my mind on just my ideas. I listen to other people. I get along with other people. I think that's kind of why they elected me as the majority leader, is because I can bring people together. I can bring people to the table. I can say, hey, look, let's listen to this other side, and let's do the things that are best for the people of South Carolina, not for me. In John Warren's book, Purpose Driven Life, the first sentence of his book says, it's not about you. That's the first sentence in that book. It's not about you. And that's what I live off of. It's not about me. It's never been about me, and it never will be about me. I got a brother and 2 sisters. It's never been about me at home. I can promise you that. I was the baby of the family. So I knew it growing up. It was never about me. Thank you.
All right. All right, now, the second question, Davey, you'll go first. What character flaw do you have that may need a little work?
That's easy. I got plenty. I only got 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
My biggest flaw is I'm not a very patient person. I run a business and time is money. And when somebody's wasting time, I don't have a whole lot of patience for that. Now my wife tells me I have road rage, but I don't know about that. I don't classify that as one of my problems. She says I got road rage, but we discuss that in the car quite a bit. But one of my biggest flaws is the fact that patience is something that I've worked on. I never pray for patience. please don't pray for patience, because God will teach you how to have patience, and you don't want to go through that in life. So I've never prayed for patience, but that is one of my flaws in life, is that I'm not a very patient person when people are wasting time.
What was the question again?
What character flaw do you have that needs a little work?
I'm not blunt or forceful enough. In all reality, a character flaw is that with a type A personality, I care too much. And too often times that care turns into intensity and deep passion to make effective change. And I've been to some incredible teams in my life. And when you get Matthew Kutilek, you get a 21 years of global experiences. And just let me dive into this one very quickly. In 2019, on very short notice, I deployed to Baghdad, Iraq to serve as the J5 in Task Force Iraq. The J5 is the head planner for a 7,000-member NATO coalition task force. Right after I deployed, I immediately knew there was a problem there because it was more like a vacation. Within 1 month, we killed a bunch of Sunni militia, and then they retaliated by rioting at the embassy. If you remember that, 2019-20. Shortly thereafter, we killed Qasem Soleimani al-Mohandes, which was 3 miles away from where I slept. Al-Mohandes was 25 meters from my bed the night before he was killed. And then there was a theater ballistic missile attack right after that. So on the NATO team were representatives, incredible military representatives from every single major NATO country in Europe. Belgium, Denmark, Netherlands, Spain, Czech Republic, Italy, England, all with various different requirements, responsibilities, desires at the country, at the national level. And who was in charge of during this tumultuous time to make sure we came together and had a cohesive plan that we could develop and convey to the 3-star headquarters? That would be me, with these teams, a team of teams from all over the world. And you don't do it by force or coercion, you do it by understanding what their needs and desires are and how to work with them and get what they want. So you put everybody in a win-win situation. And that's a small vignette that I've had to establish with patience, learning how to deal with them. If you've ever dealt with an Italian, they're much different than dealing with the guy from Denmark. Denmark is very straightforward. Italians, not so much.
All right, thanks, guys. One more question, not one more question for the night, one more of these kind of questions. Name a current South Carolina House of Representative that you admire and respect, and how did they earn that admiration and respect? So Matthew, you go first this time.
You would like a current one?
I do.
I would say, honestly, I don't have a current one that I admire and respect. I try not to engage in hero worship and follow particular individuals. Rather, I try to follow the larger scene and what is occurring at the state and national level.
Okay. Is that your answer?
That's my answer.
Okay.
I don't necessarily know that there's any one particular. I mean, I work with each and every one of them, and I'll tell you one, a previous one that I have the utmost respect for, and that was Governor Nikki. Well, she was House Member Davey Hiott at the time. She was the president of my freshman class. When I came in, we came in together. She was president of my freshman class, and she was one of the first people that I met. We remained friends throughout the whole years that she became governor, ambassador, and all those kind of things. And I really respected the way that she handled herself, even in tough times, and the way a lot of times when people would get on her and accuse her of things and do things to her, how she conducted herself and how she kind of stayed above the fray and did all those kind of things. And we remain close friends today. As a matter of fact, we talked over the weekend together. And she's the one that I admired probably the most since I've been there.
Okay. Do you want to add something to that, Matthew?
No, that's good.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to get on to some questions. This was the most popular topic that the April CO2 meeting wanted to know about was surrounds election integrity. So our first question, and it's a little bit long, so on November 14th, 2020, Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency commented that, quote, the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. By contrast, for over 18 months, there have been cyber experts, U.S. senators, state legislators, etc., who continue to raise public awareness of irregularities and other manipulations in the 2020 election, irregularities that has and will affect the efficacy of future elections. Both of these statements cannot be true. Please describe to us where and how strongly, specifically, you fall on this spectrum. 1, being, in your opinion, the election being the most secure in history, or 10, being the election was stolen, Trump won. And what, if anything, you will do to restore voter confidence in our elections. And that would be Davey goes first on this one.
Thank you. We just passed an election integrity bill that the governor signed, he signed it Friday. And I'll give you a few things that are in the bill. It creates an early voting process which only lasts for 2 weeks before the election. It allows no excuse for early voting 3 days before an election runoff. It establishes a set number of early voting sites in each county. It modifies why an absentee ballot can be cast by replacing being on vacation with absent from the county for the duration of early voting and election day. It strengthens the law of absentee mail-in voting by requiring any witness to be at least 18 years old. A witness must print their name on the outer envelope. The absentee voter must print the last 4 digits of their social security number on their ballot. Ban ballot harvesting by limiting 5 the number of absentee ballots a person can return. Previously, there's no limit. Any person delivering absentee ballots must provide a current ID and must have a complete authorization form from the person from whom they're delivering the ballot. Only those who are hospitalized, disabled, or outside the county of residence on election day may vote absentee. Those over 65 may continue to vote absentee. The Election Commission Director must conduct maintenance on the voter registration list every year using Bureau of Vital Statistics information provided monthly. Additionally, the DMV will provide the Election Commission with a list of non-residents to clean up the voter rolls. Voting systems must comply with security protocol, including not having internet or wireless connection capability, may not have any automatic adjustment function, and must preserve a secure image of each ballot for at least 24 months. Random election audits will be conducted on precincts and must be made public. Prohibits third-party funding for elections such as Zuckerberg. The President of the Senate and Speaker of the House may intervene in any case regarding challenges to an election. Anyone found guilty of voter fraud will be charged with a felony and must be fined no less than $1,000 and in prison for no more than 5 years. I think we're finally getting there in the state of South Carolina. That was just signed by the governor on Friday, and I was the co-sponsor of that bill. Ma'am?
1 to 10. Yes, 1 to 10. 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you stand on the 2020 election being stolen?
In South Carolina or overall?
But you personally, what do you believe?
Oh, I believe outside of South Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and all that, absolutely it was taken away from them.
Okay.
Absolutely it was.
1 to 10.
Okay.
1 low or 10? Which one? Which one's?
One was the election being the most secure in history, or 10 being the election was stolen.
2020?
Yes.
I believe it was stolen. It was a 10.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Matthew.
That's a great question. So obviously there was massive irregularities, if you want to call them that, during the 2020 election. We saw recently that first of all, the legislative branch has been compromised for a very long time in Washington, D.C. This past week we saw the judicial branch was compromised by the leak of the Roe versus Wade ruling. And then in 2020 we saw the executive branch, and the thing we hold most sacred dear to our heart, which is free and open elections, was compromised. And I lived in Alexandria. I worked in Washington, D.C. every single day when that would transpire. And it's incredible to me, just the irregularity alone of the mail-in ballots and the percentage that you compare to previous years is astronomical. So not only that, it takes common sense to determine the fact that the outcome of that election was not only irregular, but completely contrary to what reality was. And this is where we come up with right now. In response to the bill that the governor signed, why in the world we live, it's incredible to me. We live in the most conservative district, in the most conservative state in the United States of America. Why on earth did it take 2 years to pass any kind of legislation at the state level that deals with fair and open elections? Here's the reason why. Because there's too many people, politicians in Columbia, who've been there way too long, and they're apathetic, and they're stale and stagnant, and they just let things pass by. It requires leadership and prioritization and determination to take a stand and get people on board for core conservative values, meaning open and fair elections. Because when we lose that, as we all know, we've lost our democracy, and then we turn into balkanization, and there's small pockets of liberty throughout the United States that will get destroyed if we don't watch out what we're doing.
One to 10.
I asked Lucinda Davis. She is our go-to subject matter expert on election integrity. Do you have? I asked her. I wanted to give her the opportunity to have one follow-up question if she has. Do you have one?
I appreciate your answers, and I appreciate whatever you've done in the legislature. But the one thing I want to talk about is voting machines. We all watched on election night as the votes were switched on national TV. That could only be accomplished by voting machines. We all watched and listened as Michigan had their 7,000 votes switched. That could only be by voting machines. And since that has come out, there's been all things coming out about voting machines, how they could be pre-programmed, all kinds of access, even though they're not on the internet, quote unquote, all kinds of manipulations. I have a quote from Dr. Douglas Frank, electionfraud20.org, and he says, voting machines and computerized tabulation equipment have introduced many vulnerabilities and avenues for manipulation in elections. Cybersecurity experts tell us that there is no such thing as a fully secure computer system. The efficiency gains brought by machines are not reason enough to tolerate the loss of security, accountability, and transparency. However, we in South Carolina are still expected to vote on voting machines. There's an upcoming primary. Can you tell me how I, as a voter, can be sure that those voting machines are secure when they have been proven that they can be manipulated time and time again? What is it going to take for us to get on paper ballots, like so many other counties in our country that are going to paper ballots?
Good question.
Matthew, you want to respond to that?
Sure, absolutely. So as long as state bureaucrats are in charge of our election system, then we have nothing to worry about. It'll be fine. That was a joke. Yeah, you're right. It's incredible to me. So here we go again. It's typical politician doublespeak. In 2 of my deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, I've had to protect voting places in Iraq and Afghanistan to prevent voter fraud. How did the local citizens go vote? They had to vote in person, and you've seen this, you recall back your memory, back in the peak of Afghanistan and Iraq, vote in person. They would have a line for men and women, and when they left the voting booth, what did they have to have? Little purple ink all over their fingers. And they were very proud of that, to prevent fraud and any kind of corruption in the election process. It's the same thing with providing $40 billion worth of weapons to Ukraine. We want to arm the Ukrainians to the teeth, but we want to take guns away from American citizens. It's typical political doublespeak. So yes, I agree. On January 6, 2021, the day of the when Donald Trump spoke on the National Mall, and there was the quote-unquote insurgency, right? I rode my bicycle from my house in Alexandria down to the Lincoln Memorial and said a prayer for this great country. And I had a very great concern what was going to transpire that day because I thought I knew. On the way back home, I thought about what can we do to prevent this in the future. It starts with proper election integrity. So in my mind, it starts with, like you said, in-person voting. And this is my recommendation. Change it on a voting day. It's a 3-day election period covering a weekday and a weekend, so there's no excuse not to go to the polls. You have to vote in person with an ID. If you just have those 3 rules right there, you can eliminate a lot of the challenges that we have. And yes, I would do everything possible. There's no need in this district to have any kind of electronic voting.
All right. And Davey,
In 2019, the state of South Carolina, before the 2020 election, in 2019, the state of South Carolina spent $66 million on brand new voting equipment, state-of-the-art voting equipment. They got 3 bids. So we're gonna get 3 bids from people that did this. Dominion was one of the people that wanted to bid. And they checked, Dominion submitted their bid. They were one of 3 that submitted their bid. The folks that were making that decision at the election level called Canada. Canada says, don't get anywhere near Dominion machines. Because they'd had some trouble over in some of those provinces in Canada. So the election folks threw out the Dominion machines, so there's only 2 groups that were left voting on the new machines in South Carolina. They chose one of them. They spent $66 million. All county elections now are done the exact same way. In the past, we've had 46 counties doing their own thing. Everything is linked into Columbia now. There is a trail there. You can go back and audit any one of those machines that they choose to audit at any time and see who voted, how they voted, whether they voted in person, whether they voted on absentee, whether they voted, however they voted. You can check that out right now with these new machines. In 2020, the state of South Carolina's election was rated the 5th best in the United States. The 5th best. And you can go check that out. You can see that a lot of different places. They were rated the 5th best in the United States of America. Now, there's a lot of states around us that need to learn from the state, Georgia particularly. You know, but they got crooked characters. I know the machines are not quite as good, but they got crooked characters running their elections. And so the state of South Carolina is doing a pretty good job with their elections. It's the people around us that aren't doing any good, and they bring all the attention in the world to everybody. But every single machine, every single vote in every single county, 5.2 million people in South Carolina, you can, if every one of them voted, you can see how they voted at any time if they chose to do that.
We took advice from a country that their prime minister telling their people how they can and can't do. We took advice from them on who we're gonna get our vote machines from. I don't think so.
all right, David, behave yourself.
I'm sorry.
Okay. You'll get your chance, maybe.
I'd like to provide one response to that, though. $66 million to figure out how to vote in the state of South Carolina. Once again, that's what federal bureaucrats and career politicians will get you. I bet in this district we could have a fair and honest and open election for what? $5,000? I guarantee it. If a private company had to hold fair and honest open elections, they wouldn't spend $66 million of the taxpayers' money. That is the problem across the board. Tax after tax after tax after tax, and we'll spend it because you gave it to us. $66 million.
All right, moving on. The next question was the second most popular item, and that's education. It was recently stated in a candidate forum that CRT is gone. Given the segregation of students by race for a special program a month ago at Pickens Middle School, and the recent 2023 Teacher of the Year Award going to Dion Jameson, a self-proclaimed disruptor and staunch proponent of CRT, who has since receiving his award, is conducting a fundraiser to bring the controversial anti-racist book, Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram Kendi to students. CRT is clearly not gone. My question is, you hold the purse strings to the Board of Ed, but not the hearts or the agenda. So what can you do, each of you do, to ensure that our children are not being indoctrinated by this damning, divisive, and anti-God agenda? Matthew, I think it's your turn.
It's too late. They're already being indoctrinated right now. So the solution is this: free enterprise. School vouchers and school choice. There's not school choice anywhere in the United States of America that's fair. What are school vouchers? School vouchers are when you take the $18,000 that the State Board of Education pays for every single student in the state, and you give it to parents with children. and then you privatize the school system. You can still have a public school system, that's fine, but you have to privatize the school system. And the fair market will determine what happens next. You'll have vocational schools, you'll have schools that focus on the sciences, the math, the arts, and you allow parents the option based off of the needs of their children and their own needs, where their children go to school. And so when Pickens Middle School brings out an outside influencer from Rock Hill with her destructive Marxist leftist agenda and starts indoctrinating our children, we say, nope, we're not going there. We're going to this school over here with our $18,000 voucher that the government provided for us. We have got to get the federal and state government out of the school system. The fight has not even begun. We haven't even crossed the start line yet. Starting at the highest levels of education, the Marxist agenda has infiltrated all the way down to the school systems. And it's not just far left, it's dealing with critical issues of sexuality. It's not about the prevent men and women's sports. That has nothing to do with it. It's about completely redefining what it means to be a man and a woman. And that's part of CRT. And it's incredible to me, the fact that in this state, we just awarded the Teacher of the Year to a disciple of Kendi, who is the primary race baiter of critical race theory. And every time an issue like this comes up, I think for certain, my incumbent, the incumbent who's been in office for 18 years, is going to come forth and take a stand on an issue, and I don't see it ever. I've looked back. I've followed this district for 22 years. And in hot topics like this, I've never seen him take a stand and say, this is what I believe in, and this is what the people of my district believe in, and we're not going to stand for it.
Oh, thank you.
I made the comment that I thought CRT was dead, and I think Ms. Raines brought it to my attention that it was still there somewhere. So there was a bill there. Last year's budget, we put a proviso in because we couldn't get a bill passed in the Senate that outlawed CRT. The Senate did not take the bill up. We passed it over there, had everything over there. They did not take it up. Put it in the budget. We thought the Department of Education could read language that it said in the budget you can't do anything with CRT. You've got a superintendent of education that encourages that. Now that's my plug now is superintendent of education debate that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks. That's the most important election in this state. I'm telling you, if you don't put the right person in the superintendent of education, CRT's not going away because the lady in there right now pushes that. And she allows those people sort of the wiggle room, so to speak, to do it. So we passed another bill this year, sent it to the Senate. The Senate didn't take it up. They've got a senator over there from Chester who said he's going to filibuster for the next 3 weeks and shut the whole system down if they took it up. CRT is very, very, very critical issue in the great state in the Pickens County in South Carolina. We have got to abolish the Education Oversight Committee, the EOC. You've got to abolish that committee because they're the ones that made the record. They're the ones that picked the School Teacher of the Year. There was a young man from Liberty who was nominated as one of the finest teachers around.
Yep.
And I felt like he was hands down better than any of the others running.
Yep.
He didn't even get in the top 3. When I saw the list of candidates, I could have told you who was going to win. Because that's just where we are with the Education Oversight Committee. The EOC has got to go. We've introduced bills after bill after bill to abolish the EOC. The Department of Education has a board. You don't need another board. Take a look at the EOC board. The EOC and Department of Education don't need to be 2 separate boards. The Department of Education needs to run their own thing. But you've got to get somebody in there at the head of the table that will make sure that they can read the language that we pass to them and make sure that this kind of stuff gets stopped.
All right. Do you have something to say, Matthew?
Yes, I'd like to make a respectful comment. David, you've been in office for 18 years. You've been in a position to get rid of the EOC. So why have you not done it?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm a team player. I'm not going down there and beating my chest. It takes 65 people in the State House to get any bill passed. You got to have 65 friends that think like you do. I can't go down there and pass anything. I've never been able to pass a bill by myself. It takes 65 other people to pass a bill. Then you got to send it to the Senate, and you got to get 30 people over there that agree to you. It's awful hard to do that. There was over 1,800 pieces of legislation this year introduced in the State House. About 6 or 7 of them got passed. It's got to go through the governor's office, get signed. It's got to be, if he vetoes it, then you got to override the veto. It's not as easy just walking down there and going, I believe I'll snap my fingers and stop this today. You got to be able to work with people. You go back and look how many times I've signed on to a bill that wanted to stop EOC. Every time it's come up, I've signed on to that bill. I voted to abolish EOC every single time it's come up there, and I will vote to do that every single time. But I got to have 65 other people that agree with me.
So that brings us to the next question, which is a great segue right into this. Parents and taxpayers need to be able to hold our South Carolina Board of Education more accountable for the failures we are seeing in student achievement, as well as unwanted indoctrination taking place. The State Board of Election members are appointed positions at present. Do you support changing these positions to elected positions? And would you support abolishing the EOC, the Education Oversight Committee, the EOC that they're talking about, and handing those duties over to the elected members of the State Board of Education? So, elected or appointed? And Davey, I think you go first.
I think it's my turn.
All right.
Well, I've already answered the EOC part of it. Obviously, we need to abolish that immediately. I don't have a problem with the Board of Education. Usually, what they do is they go by congressional districts, and they'll nominate somebody from each congressional, 7 congressional districts, and they'll have one person in each congressional district that will serve on that board. It's usually with advice and consent of the Senate. And so, you know, the governor, I don't have a problem with the governor appointing those. That's why I still believe that the governor should appoint the second superintendent of education, because education is the top priority in most states. And if the governor is a Republican and the superintendent of education is a Democrat, then they're going to butt heads right off. So they ought to be able to appoint who they want to, because they're going to catch the blame for superintendent of education. They're going to catch blame for education. But yet the superintendent of education is elected just like the governor is. So it's awful hard for the governor to go in and say, look, I'm your boss, I'm going to do this kind of stuff. So I've always said that the superintendent of education ought to be appointed by the governor, so that the buck stops with the governor when it comes to education. Right now the buck stops with nobody, because nobody knows who's in charge of education. But I don't have a problem with them being appointed or elected, because they have advice and consent of the Senate right now. So if they're appointed by the governor, they still going to have advice and consent. If they're elected, they still going to have to go through the same process. But the EOC's got to be disbanded.
For fair and open elections for any government position, because that's when the transparency occurs, when people have to actually run on what they stand for and the values they represent, especially here in South Carolina while we still can. That's the first thing. The second thing is this Education Oversight Committee. Once again, that requires, it's incredible to me that after 18 years, if you have not conveyed your position on a certain topic to the citizens of the 4th District, and you've not done something about an action to those priorities, then how much more time do you need? 20 years, 22 years, will it be abolished 23 years? 25 years, 26. See, when I go around and talk to everyone in the district, and I've been all over the place. I spent an hour and a half yesterday morning before church driving around all the way to Saluda River area, because that's another topic about what happens when it floods in the future, because they're getting runoff all through their water of the massive developments coming in from Greenville and Travelers Rest. Different topic. But you listen to everybody, what they say, that everyone's concerned about education. And you know where I stand in education, because it's on my website. It's on my prioritized list. Number 4, stop the federal intrusion into our district, into this state. You know, I'm an open, but it's incredible to me, the fact that currently, right now, I filed to run for this office one day prior to the election for the filing deadline. And since that time, I know, apparently this is incredible to me, the fact that you're trying to go after me as a lack of leadership or lack of coordination or ability to do anything. So in 1 month, I've established a votematthewkutilek.com website. My company has been in office 18 years, has no website, so you know where he stands on any issue. I'm as clear and transparent as possible. You go to my Facebook page. I comment on local issues and state issues, even though I'm not in a position to influence them. So the question is, in the future, who do you want to lead, serve, and represent this district?
Janelle Randers has a follow-up question.
I'm very upset with the budget proviso that was passed. It doesn't seem to have any teeth. What you guys passed down there was supposedly if there was evidence of CRT that there would be funding loss. There has been no funding loss. And as far as I know, there's been no effort for that to even occur as a result of what happened at Pickens Middle School. So my question is, what good is it to pass something like this that doesn't have any teeth and y'all don't enforce it?
I guess that goes to Matthew, I think, first.
Not only do we not enforce it, we just gave Teacher of the Year to an advocate of critical race theory. So this is exactly the reason, one of the many reasons why we need term limits. Because the longer you're in a position, the more apathetic you become. The $6 million turns into $66 million for voter elections. The $10,000 a year per student turns into $18,000 a year per student. You lose perspective of all reality, and it's no longer a concern. It just happens. And you lose sight of the fact that you are the representative and leader of this district. And that you actually can do something with the voice and position that you have if you enact upon it. So yes, again, I stated before clearly, I will take the lead of my hero, George Washington, and I will absolutely, when I get elected to this seat on June 14th, I will serve for no more than 8 years. That's it for this seat. Because after that, it's the same reason why I went shopping in Asheville 2 weeks ago on Mother's Day. I went to Dillard's up there at the outlet mall there. And it was a very keen observation. I was in there walking around waiting for my wife and 4 daughters to get their shopping done, is the fact that all the employees in the store rotated positions throughout the hour and a half I was there. From the dressing room to the front register to the back register to walking the aisles. And why did they do that? Because of complacency and apathy. If they were to stand in the same position all day long, they would lose sight of reality. There would be theft there. They wouldn't be as sharp and coherent as they should be. So they impose 30-minute term limits before they rotate to the next station. Same with politicians. You stay in DC or you stay in Columbia for more than 8 years or 4 years, and you lose perspective of reality and what matters. And then you deceive yourself and think you can't do anything about it because you're only one person. That is unacceptable. Leadership is about having visionary planning, objective goals and milestones, and getting people on board for that goal, objective, and milestone.
Ms. Ranger, you're exactly right. We understood that the proviso was, we thought the proviso was strong enough to stop the CRT. It was not. It was not. We admit that now. I admit that now. I voted for the proviso. We sent a bill over to the Senate that would have stopped all that. It had all that language taken out of it. It clearly stopped. It would have stopped CRT. Could not get it passed in the Senate at the last minute. We had to throw it back in the budget again this year at the last minute. That doesn't give you. That's not an excuse. That's just the way. That's just the way it happened. Now, the part of the funding, I asked about that. I asked, why is the Department of Education not being penalized? The answer I got was, well, we're going to see if this will stop them. You know, and they're going through a whole different avenues. They're going through all kinds of little avenues over here where it doesn't look like it's coming right out of the Department of Ed. They got all these little avenues that they figured out. That we're talking about the Pickens Middle School. You know, 3 months ago that lady was in Liberty, and nobody knew it. Not a soul knew that in Pickens County. Nobody complained about it. Nobody fussed about it, nobody marched about it, and then it shows up in Pickens, and the reason everybody knew about it was because that guy sent out the email that got out in public. It's the exact same lady that was in Liberty, what, 3 months ago, I guess? And not a soul showed up to complain about it. And she went on about her business, and that's why she was invited back to Pickens, because nobody complained about it when she was in Liberty. Doesn't make it
She
right.
was highly recommended.
She was highly recommended. She really
Black
was.
History Month.
Yeah.
They used to Black History Month program.
Absolutely. She came in at Liberty and did the exact same thing, but nobody complained, so they brought her right back to Pickens.
I don't think that they segregated students
did
at
not.
Liberty.
They did
So
not.
that, to me, was the whole brunt of the problem, the segregating of students.
It came,
And that came from the principal, and in my opinion, there's no consequences anymore for anything.
I agree.
And it's driving me insane.
I agree with you.
It's just like,
The
that's
prin-
okay.
It's okay.
It's
The
all
prin-
right. Everybody makes mistakes.
The principal and the HR director approved that visit, approved that person coming.
We need to fire them. Get them out.
How much, do you know how much involvement Danny Merck had with that?
Danny Merck was in Texas at a conference.
But I mean, did he have any knowledge
He had-
that it was even
he-
happening?
He told me he had no knowledge. I called him when I heard about it. The minute I heard about it, I picked up the phone. He says, I'm on a flight headed back from Texas. And he says, what I know is what I've talked to my HR person about.
I have FOIA requested all communications between lots of people.
I would love to see it.
And they want $250 from me to fill that request.
Okay, no, let me take a pause, take a breath
Yep.
here. Because we're here to contrast
Yeah.
these two candidates.
I know, I'm sorry.
This is not a town hall.
I'm sorry.
So here's another.
We'll go back.
Here's another specific example. When this occurred, again, I was sitting in my chair at home, optimistically waiting to hear from the 18-year incumbent, who is the House Majority Leader, on his stance on this issue, which is very cut and dry, black and white, very clear. And silence. Nothing. No statement, no official statement, no projection from the State House in Columbia, nothing. I just do not understand how you can be served in a position of leadership and be silent. It is not the time to have private people in public places, because we are getting destroyed at all levels of our democracy.
Okay. Davey, do you have any comment for that? Okay. All right, we're moving on. The third topic that was near and dear to people's hearts is the unborn. So I think, Davey, you go first on this one? Is that right? Yes. Okay. Both of you have stated that you are against Planned Parenthood. In the 2023 state South Carolina budget, H 5150, which was passed by the House on March 15, 2022, quote, this budget still contains funding for abortions and Planned Parenthood. That's according to Josiah Magnuson's, the State House District 38. We want to understand the two candidates' commitment to the unborn. Have you or will you ever approve a South Carolina state budget that includes funding for Planned Parenthood and other means that facilitate abortions?
First off, I received this letter today from South Carolina Citizens for Life endorsing me. Appreciate your outstanding 100% pro-life voting record, your unwavering commitment to protecting innocent human life. We are honored to stand with you for this righteous cause. So I was proud to receive that endorsement today. There's $100,000 in the state budget for Planned Parenthood. It's a federal pass-through. It's federal dollars. It's a federal pass-through that comes from the federal government. 3 years ago, Governor McMaster said, no more money in the budget. No more state money in the budget. We used to have to put a 10% match to receive that federal $100,000. We pulled out our 10% match 3 years ago. We thought the federal government would say, hey, where's your 10% match? We're going to stop funding it. They didn't say a word. They just sent their $100,000. We haven't put any state money in the budget in 3 years for Planned Parenthood. And yet they continue to send $100,000 to a pass-through that we required to send to the Department of Health and Human Services for Planned Parenthood. It's part of the federal government, part of the federal government's plan. There is no state dollars being used for Planned Parenthood. There's $100,000 that comes from the federal government. We stopped 3 years ago. We were required to do that 10% match. We stopped that 3 years ago, so there has not been any state dollars put in the budget in the last 3 years for Planned Parenthood.
You want to respond to that, Matthew?
Sure, I think everyone in this room agrees to the sanctity of human life, and there's nothing more precious than that. And when you talk about the state budget, and you talk about Planned Parenthood and what they do not only in the state but across the nation, being subsidized by taxpayer money to kill innocent life. And so I understand it's $100,000, but sometimes in your life, with your morals and convictions and values, you have to make a judgment call. Weigh the pros and the cons. Is it worth putting up a fight for $100,000 of federal money to stop the state budget or vote against it and take a stand, or is it not? And in my personal, I thought about this, and I do appreciate the fact that legislation was passed last week saying they will call a special session of the South Carolina State House and Congress and Senate to pass a bill if Roe v. Wade gets overturned. That is an incredible step forward. But with this particular budget, I thought about this because this topic came up a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking about it the last couple weeks. At what point do you draw the line of no compromise? And so I drew that line in my own heart in April of 2006. When my first daughter, Emma, was conceived and the first time I saw her on that sonogram. And there is no way that I would compromise life for $100,000 of a line item in the budget and my values. So I do not support voting for a state budget that includes any provisos provided by the federal government to fund the murder of human beings. Amen.
So, to be clear, Matthew, I'm hearing you say that you would not approve the state budget?
I would not. I would be willing to take a stand on that hill and fight it out with anybody that wants to fight it out, because I cannot compromise on life.
Davey, how about you? Have you voted for?
I have voted for the state budget, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. I have a few more questions, but I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to let you guys ask a question if you want to. I mean, if you guys want to. In the years past, we the people have thought our duty was to vote, and that's it. We elect someone, and then we sit back, shaking our heads as things go downhill. But times have changed. We want a righteous nation, and we are ready to work and to fight for it. And we want to be informed. I have learned so much in the past few weeks about our state government just by these candidate forums. If elected, what is your plan specifically to keep your constituents informed of bills and issues that matter to us, that we can become a partner with you toward that righteousness? And I think, Matthew, that's yours. Your first.
Certainly. I think in the last 45 days I've set the standard of what it means to be communicating with the local populace and the citizens. When I get elected on 14 June, I'll continue to act the same way I have right now. My website was up and running in a matter of 2 weeks. It's clearly conveys where I stand on issues and my priorities. It's an open book that's free to communicate with me, and I respond to it every single day. Same with my Facebook page, so social media. In addition to that, I've gone into every meeting, every precinct meeting in the area for the last 45, 60 days. When I get elected on 14 June, I know you don't assume office until November, December, January. However, I was thinking that's 6 months of preparation time for me, for Matthew Kutilek, to get to know every single person I could possibly meet in this district and understand their aims, goals, desires, wants, cares, concerns, and worries. And take all that cumulative information on my shoulders so I can effectively represent this district. So how do I communicate? I can assure you, my website was set up with the long range in mind. When I'm down in the State House, every week, every day, you will have meeting notes of what was accomplished that week. my priorities. This is what we accomplished and what we failed to accomplish. This is where I need to work on. This is what I don't need to work on. This is where I need to hear on you on this issue. It's kind of black and white. It's gray area. Help me out, educate me on this particular topic. So I think I've done a very good job of communicating with we, the people of this district. And I will absolutely do that because, once again, I care. And it's not just about Pickens, the city of Pickens. It's about all the outlining areas. I had a great meeting at Dacusville Heritage Association in Dacusville. I've been to farm days countless times. And it was interesting to hear those farmers and those guys that love tractors down there of what they care about. And I want to know that. You know the number one thing I've heard from people who live in rural areas? How do we control the coyote and the wild hog population in the district? So I guarantee you, by the end of June, I will host a meeting at Holly Springs Store or Holly Springs School. That's another issue that's a debacle that should have been solved years ago. With as many hunters, the forestry department, and farmers, so we can get a whiteboard and say, what's the problem with these hogs and with these coyotes, and how do we effectively deal with it before we get government involvement?
All right, thank you. Davey?
First off, you can kill hogs and coyotes 24/7 anytime you want to. So, you know, that's I'll help you solve that problem right here. But you can kill them at any time, and we passed a law several years ago because of major issues. So it's free reign on coyotes. You even got a bounty on coyotes. If you kill it, there's about 7 coyotes in the state of South Carolina. If you bring it in, they'll give you the one on marked. You bring it in, and they'll give you a bounty on it. So. That's how much they want.
I'm just telling you what the number one topic in the rural areas that's been addressed to me is.
Okay, the question is, how are you going to keep us informed of issues and bills that matter to us?
Well, I think just about everybody in this room has my cell phone number. I think everybody in this room knows where I am. At work, when I'm in town, they know where I am. I don't do a whole lot of social media. I don't spend a whole lot of time on Facebook and all those kind of things. I don't necessarily like all the things that's brought into this world, and so I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media. I'm available all the time when I'm in town. You know, people call me, people email me, people text me. I haven't had any trouble whatsoever with people getting in touch with me over the years. A lot of folks in here have reached out to me, and I think I've been pretty accessible to everybody that's reached out to me. And so, you know, I have a Facebook page, but I don't do a whole lot on it because I don't necessarily like all the things that Facebook brings to the table. And so, but I feel like I'm very accessible. I'm gone 4 days a week. I'm not in the district 4 days a week. If you're successful, you'll be gone 4 days a week. And so, it's kind of hard to do all those things you say you can do when you're doing the job that you're being asked to do. And so, but I'm very accessible. I don't have any problem whatsoever. People having my cell phone number, having my work number. Don't have a home phone. I got rid of that a while back. But I feel like I'm very accessible. Joe comes to see me quite a bit.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you, guys. So, do we have a couple questions? All right. Alan's got a question here.
This question is for both of you. I'm a member of the Pickens County Republican Party Resolution Committee, and we've approved the following resolution. The resolution of the Pickens County Republican Party for a moratorium on the 2017 South Carolina gas tax. Whereas fuel prices have drastically increased recently and will continue to increase in the foreseeable future. Whereas general inflation is an alarming rate of potential to become hyperinflation, pushing the citizens of South Carolina, lower income families, and those on a fixed income in financial distress. Whereas the surplus of the South Carolina tax gas trust fund has grown to over $1 billion. $1 billion. That's $1,000 million since the 2017 gas tax was implemented. Whereas SCD DOT has stated they cannot spend the over $1 billion to repair roads in a timely fashion due to lack of contractor resources and other reasons. Whereas the unused surplus continues to grow as gas prices increase, negatively impacting families in South Carolina.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that South Carolina's legislature will put a moratorium on collecting the 2017 gas tax when the cash balance to fund pending vendor payments exceeds $500 million. All surplus funds will be distributed between 46 counties on a monthly basis in the form of county transportation funds using the same formula that is currently used to determine how much those funds will be. My question, will you sponsor a bill in November this year if you're elected in its final version, not necessarily this version, it's in its final version, to accomplish this gas tax moratorium?
Do you guys get what he's saying? Yeah. Oh. Okay, Matthew, I think that's it.
Oh, what first? Yeah, okay. Priority number 2, vast improvements in roads and infrastructure in this district. The roads in this district are a complete and utter disaster. We all know it. And the more I think about this, the more I drive around. You know, I drove the other night from Pickens all the way to Anderson. And right as you leave Pickens County, the 4th district line, the road all the way to Anderson is incredible. 2-lane, nice paved road, completely repaved, quality roundabouts that prevent you from having to stop at red lights or stop signs that maintain the continuous flow of traffic. Yet when you get to this district, it's disaster. I drove around yesterday before church for an hour and a half. Again, conducting, just looking around. 183, I drove the length, or half of it yesterday. Stopped in a few places just to analyze the road. Like, this is incredible. This is a microcosm of what we face here in the district. People leave every day to go work in Greenville to go on an unimproved surface road that should have been repaved and expanded 20 years ago. They spend their money outside of the district and they come back to their families late at night along a dangerous 2-lane road. So back to your question. Absolutely, I've already signed a pledge, multiple pledges, to not support any increase in any type of taxes ever. You know, I would say unless there's a time of war or some place where the entire democracy is at stake, then there might be an exception. However, but that would be an extreme, rare exception. There's alternate sources of funding. It's not a inflow problem, it's a spending problem at state and federal levels because of career politicians who, once again, who have maintained their position there, become apathetic. They lose perception of reality, and they just vote to raise more taxes. Look at I love it. Right now, it's incredible. The Pickens County Council is meeting right now in a special session to raise taxes again.
Okay.
Will you sponsor a bill?
Would I sponsor? Yes, sir. I did say yes. I support everything you just said. Absolutely.
Alan, are you asking, right now it's 8 cents, right? Because it's been 2 cents a year. This is the 4th year, right? 5th year. What is it now? Is it kind of
the 5th year?
So it's 10 cents, right?
It'll be 28 cents next year when they finish raising. It'll be 28 cents. Right now it's 26 cents. Yeah.
It went up 2 cents a year for 5 years. How's that 26?
It went up 2 cents, but there was already a gas tax.
So you're talking about repealing the whole thing. You're not talking about just repealing
moratorium until we bring that.
You're not talking about moratorium on the 12 cents that the legislature passed in 2017. You're talking about the entire gas tax.
Well, your choice, I guess. They got too much money.
First off, and your concept I agree with. Here's the problem. If it's 10 cents now, I'm going to work off the 2 cents for 5 years, okay? For 6 years, I'm sorry. By the way, I voted against that. I was one of 6 Republicans who voted against that. So if you do that and you stop right now, you're talking about suspending 10 cents. All right. So if you pick that back up, let's say that the numbers drop below $500 million in a year. So we'll pick it back up at 10. We're going to add 10 cents back to the gas, or we're going to go back to 2. We're going to jump. We're going to take 10 off and put 10 back on.
Yeah, if we get down to 500 million,
we're going to put the 10 cents back on.
It's going to take about 3 years.
So here's the problem with that. And your concept's good. Here's the problem with that. We take 10 cents off. Everybody You know, and I've been told gas is gonna be $4.80 by Labor Day, okay? So, if you take 10 cents off, let's say it's $4.19 now today, it goes down to $4.09. 6 months, we have to put that 10 cents back on, what's gonna happen? They're gonna scream and yell, you raise my taxes again. So,
They just tell them, well, we gave you a moratorium.
that don't, Alan, you know good and well, that don't, how that, they'd say, well, you just passed another 10-cent gas tax. I understand what you're doing. I'm not necessarily sure this is the way to do it, but I understand what you're doing. Either you shut it off and don't reapply it, or else you just let it go or reduce it a little bit. Now, I don't have a problem with reducing it a little bit, but if you cut it off at 10 cents today, because we're at $1 billion, and in 6 months, after all that, some of that money's been spent, we get down to 400 million, all of a sudden we got to put 10 cents back on. It's at $4.80 when we put that 10 cents back on, what happens?
Yeah.
People go absolutely crazy.
I did say that in its final version. This is
Yeah,
what it says.
but I like your idea, but it would be crazy to say, put that 10 cents back on it if it's at $4.80. And so, but your idea, I think, you're headed in the right direction.
Let's keep it simple. They have a $1 billion surplus in SCDOT. What's the prioritization of road improvements in the 4th district? And where's the line item list that shows the taxes that we pay in the 4th district and how they're applied to the roads here, not somewhere else? Because clearly, you go to Anderson and Greenville County, somebody's doing the roads right. But we're not doing it right here in Pickens County in the 4th district. That's absolutely for certain.
Dave, you have something to say about that?
Yeah, you can go to scdot.gov and see any list of House District 4 road projects at any time. They list every single one of them from 2022 all the way to the next 5 years. They list them as they go. They tell you where they stand, whether they're in the engineering stage, whether they're in the architectural stage, whether they're we're fixing to let the contract go. You can go to scdot.gov and see that at any time you want to see that.
All right, another question. Yes, sir. No, yes.
Give them the microphone, it's so hard to hear
Yeah.
over this.
You'll have to come up here and use the microphone. We didn't have a wireless mic, sorry.
This question is for both of you. But, Mr. Hiott, I've heard you speak on multiple occasions now, and you mentioned some disturbing things. And here are a few examples. One is that the mandate bill got watered down by the Senate and committees. That one senator can block a House bill. That the Department of Transportation controls the road tax money raised by Congress, and that there is no congressional oversight. And you have convinced me that there are a lot of bureaucratic issues, and that these bureaucratic issues have, in effect, made you ineffective in getting things done for District 4. So my question is, what are your top 3 bureaucratic problems that you believe need fixed? And specifically, how are you going to fix them? And for Matthew, yours is basically the same. Name your top 3 bureaucratic problems that impact District 4, and how would you specifically change them?
I know you get frustrated with. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm not gonna lie to you. So I'm gonna tell you the truth. The issue about the Senate holding up one bill, one person can hold up a bill in the Senate, is absolutely the truth. I don't have a vote in the Senate. Senator Rex Rice has our vote in the county. I can never change what goes on in the Senate. There is absolutely nothing I can do in the Senate. If I want to run for the Senate and get elected to the Senate, then I can serve over there and try to get those rules changed. There is nothing I can do in the state Senate, South Carolina State Senate. The biggest issue and the biggest bureaucratic issue I see is the fact that so many people get bogged down by simply trying to get the basic services from state governments. Permits, DMV trying to get a real ID license. I mean, I don't see how a female can get a real ID license, because you got to go back 40 generations just to find a birth certificate sometimes. And those kind of things are just absolutely ridiculous. We passed a bill this year that stops that allows the DMV to take either your passport or your current ID and give a female, a lady that's been divorced or a lady that may not be able to get to their marriage license, a real ID. I think that was a big issue. I think that was one of the main issues that I had, was that I had people calling me going, I need a real ID, but I've either been divorced or I was married back in 1930 or whatever, and they had no way to get hold of those documents. And so those are the kind of things that stymie the people in South Carolina, not only in House District 4, but all across the state of South Carolina. I spend a lot of time just dealing with those kind of things, trying to help people work their way through the issues of South Carolina. Regulations, there is over 3,000 regulations in DHEC. Now, that's way, way, way too many. And so you just try to get a permit, a septic tank permit, it's almost impossible. And those are the kind of things that I want to try to continue to try to get those things removed.
How can you do that, Davey?
Well, I can introduce bills. I can get them. We can help get them passed in the House. But the process is very simple. It's got to go through the House. It's got to go through the Senate. And it's got to go to the governor's office for his signature. And so we passed a whole lot more bills than the Senate ever took up. In a non-election year for a senator, you're not going to see much come out of there because they're really not too concerned about it. In 2 years, when it's an election year for the Senate, you'll see a lot of things come out of the Senate. They do a lot of things.
Isn't that a shame?
But it's the process that they use in the Senate. And they have 46 senators, and if they don't like something going on, they'll just stick their name on that bill and it immediately stops. That's one of their rules. We don't have that rule in the House. And so that's why so many more things get through the House than do the Senate. I wish they could change the rules, but like I said, I have no influence whatsoever other than talking to Senator Rice about it. And he's all on board of trying to straighten out some of those things.
Okay. Is that too late?
Yeah, well, he had his 2, and then you asked him the second part.
Oh, I got you.
So he got about 30 more.
That's all right. Matthew. So the question is, your top 3 bureaucratic problems, and what would you do to fix these problems?
If there are bureaucratic disasters in District 4 that revolve around taxpayer-funded fraud, waste, and abuse, and they have not been dealt with the last 18 years, they will not be dealt with in the next 2 years. I can assure you of that. And as your elected representative of the State House, I will absolutely never say, ever, that I am not in a position of influence to impact change, no matter what level of government that it is. So, in order, Paulie, thank you for your question. First of all, fraud, waste, anywhere, just follow the taxpayer trail. School funding, road funding, right there, let's start there. Let's start with bureaucratic nightmares in the healthcare system and our dependency upon health insurance and big pharmaceutical companies and drugs. We have a huge narcotic problem and also a pharmaceutical problem in the United States of America. Wherever there is, and what creates this? We all know what creates bureaucratic nightmares. Bureaucrats.
That's right.
Right? And how do you create a bureaucrat? You stay in the same position year after year after year after year, become stagnant, and again, $66 million is no big deal. Why not $80 million? Why not have a surplus of $2 billion? Who cares what they think in 4th District? We're gonna tax you to death and get $3 billion in SCDOT and go pave the 526 interchange in Charleston. Last thing I'd like to say in that 2 minutes. So how do you solve a bureaucracy? You get new, energetic, dynamic, and proven leadership, people who are willing to take a stand and represent the core values of the people of the district. And you impact change. That's how it works. That is the definition of leadership. But it requires a leader to do that.
We've got time for one more question. Anyone? Yes, come on up here, young man.
This question is for you, Mr. Hiott. I'm not sure where you stand on this issue. So, Are you for or against the growth of the 4th District through local businesses, and why or why not?
Thank you, that's a great question.
I'm all in favor of growth that fits Pickens County community. I don't think we ought to just open the door and just let anybody come in here and anybody just, I mean, I've said this before, this county's not big enough for a BMW. This county's not big enough for a Michelin. This county's not, we don't have the workforce, we don't have the land, we don't have all those things that go along with what you need to do all those kind of things. And not only that, I don't think all the people want all those extra people coming into this county. We need to make sure that what we get in this county is something that fits this community. I meet with people all the time. I meet with CEOs of companies that are looking at Pickens County. I meet with CEOs of people that are looking at South Carolina. And every one of them will say, first thing they say is, you've got a lot of water, so we're coming to South Carolina. These companies that are moving from out west are drying up. So they come to South Carolina because we have plentiful water. And then the second thing is, how about your workforce? Well, we all know how many help wanted signs are out here now because people won't work, people got out of the workforce for whatever reason. But we need to make sure that that sector of company that's coming to Pickens County fits what this community holds dear. I've been here all my life. There's some people that don't want anybody else in here. There's some people that want everybody in here. I'm right down the middle. I think there's a happy medium between letting people come in and inviting people to come in, and encouraging them to set up shop here, as opposed to just opening the doors and allowing any and everybody to come in that don't fit our community.
Can you give us an example of either what you perceive or what you have had influence in someone coming in? Like what type of business do you see what I'm asking?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
When Reliable Sprinkler was coming into Pickens County, they're called the Fee Brothers. That's their name, Fee.
Mm-hmm.
And so they called and asked me if I would meet with the Fee Brothers and have lunch with them. So I had lunch with them, and we got in the car. And at that time, the old Pickens High School was right up here where the middle school is. I think most of you remember the old Pickens High School up here. Some of us went to that school, I think. And they said, show me your education system. And I went, okay. So I'm thinking in my mind, where do I go? He said, we were close to here. He said, show me your high school. And I said, okay. So we drove up to the high school, and it was raining that day. We walked in the front door, and there's a big giant bucket catching water in the front lobby. And he sort of looked at his brothers and he goes, they don't think much about education, do they? And I said, well, we're in the process of building 4 new high schools. It's kind of a controversial thing in Pickens County. If they're fixing to build 4 new high schools, I think it's going to make a better appearance for our schools and all this kind of stuff. We went to Clemson University. They said, we know a lot about Clemson University. Can you take us down there? We went to Clemson University. They said they were Boston College graduates. Now this is kind of a funny story because they were Boston College graduates. And it just so happened that I called ahead to the one of the guys at Clemson University, and I said, hey look, can you have somebody meet us at Howard's Rock? And so somebody met us at Howard's Rock. They opened the gate and allowed the 3 Fee brothers to run down the hill. So they got to run down the hill up to the middle of the field. And about that time, someone came on the loudspeaker and they went, you could be sitting in this box every time Clemson plays Boston College. Right here. And that sold them on coming to Pickens County. Because they were huge athletes. They all played ball at Boston College. But that's just the kind of thing. Everybody's different when you recruit a business. Mm-hmm. But that was just the kind of thing that was ironic to me. That story always sticks out in my mind, is that going to Clemson University, for them to be able to say, hey look, we all played sports at Boston College. We're big sports guys. And we're going to be able to see our team play here every other year when they play Clemson at home. So that's just kind of the stories you get when you take CEOs around. There's plenty more I could share with you, but that's just one that always sticks in my mind.
Gotcha. Matthew, can you answer that young man's question, or have them put on that?
Sure, I think I get the gist of it, absolutely. So, I take exception to quite a few of those remarks. That's a pessimistic view on the 4th District and our workforce and our future generation. I take exception to the fact that we can't have a BMW is an incredible company. So I think I've told some of you this before. I'm adherent of Dave Ramsey's principle, and he always talks about getting a second and third job. So my second and third job at my time in the Marine Corps was detailing cars. I love cars, and I like to detail them, make them very clean. And in that process, I started liking BMWs. They're an incredible machine if you have one. And so I purchased a used car, Dave Ramsey principles. I didn't pay cash, unfortunately. Should have paid cash. I love BMW. BMW just announced they're going to invest $7 billion over the next 10 years, I believe, 20 years, in electric vehicles. $7 billion. Currently, around Spartanburg, there's 250 businesses that primarily support BMW. That's an incredible economic infrastructure. And we can absolutely support a quality company like BMW. We don't have the land. Are you kidding me? We have plenty of land. We don't have the workforce. I work at the Pickens County Commerce Park. I work there in manufacturing. I currently run $6 million worth of jobs with customers around the country. And by the way, they don't live here, but I'm able to communicate with them every single day of the week for their projects. And it's offensive to me to say that, I'd love to invite you to my manufacturing company and show you the workforce that we have that live in this district and what they can accomplish. And if you follow me on social media, you can tell that I just planted my garden this weekend. Spent 10 hours planting my garden. Why did I post it on social media? Because I've learned in my life to never underestimate the impact you can have on another human being. So the intent of that post is that maybe there's a young man in the district who's never ever once thought about growing a garden, but he sees Matthew Kutilek growing his garden and growing his own vegetables. And he approaches me and says, hey, I want to learn that. Absolutely, young man. Same with apprenticeships, electricians, plumbers. If the young men and women can see an example and they can set their mind on that, we unleash the enterprise spirit that is unique to the United States. That does not exist around the globe. It exists because we live in a federal democracy where we have free market capitalism. And once a young person realizes the potential that they have in their soul that is unrecognized, it's amazing what they can accomplish. So you make this again, priority number 3. Visionary planning growth for business, economic and business growth, population growth. And you have a plan. And you meet with people. And you clean up the road. You pave the roads, the infrastructure. You clean up the trash. And you motivate the young men and women here to serve in that plant. And then we set the example that this is the best maintained and well-run plant in the entire United States of America. Why? Because we're in the 4th District and we care. And these are the young men and women that work here. And we're darn proud of them. That's optimism right there that we're lacking in the State House for this district.
Okay, that's going to wrap up it's almost 8:30. If you guys could just take a minute or two for a final comment, and then we'll say goodnight. So, let's see. Matthew, you go first.
Absolutely. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I appreciate everyone here. The election is 28 days away. If it hasn't been fixed or changed in the last 18 years, it's not going to be fixed in the next 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years. So I encourage you. Everyone asks me, how's it going? It's going extremely well. I can assure you that I am 100% committed to this election, in spite of the fact that I have a full-time job, full-time family, 10 acres, and it's the end of the school year and all the parties. I'm missing my daughter's graduation tonight and an award ceremony where she got nominated by her peers and the faculty to be the #1 student in her 8th grade class. And I want you to get as many people involved in this election as possible because we don't have 2 years to wait. We saw that, how much of our freedoms and liberties were taken the last 2 years because of the coronavirus. We are in a fight for our democracy and for our lives, and I cannot underestimate that enough. So I want to invite you, on 7 June, we are going to have a volunteer rally and a party right here at Cafe Connections at 7 p.m. And I want you to bring you and 50 of your friends here. And we are going to do everything possible to win this election by 14 June. So I can serve, lead, and represent you, the people of the 4th District of South Carolina.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Cafe Connections, for hosting this event. Thank you for coming. This is an important election. I have been there 18 years. I don't hide that one bit. I have voted since I was 18 years old in this district. I feel like that's very important that someone that's voted in this district should be representing this district. As far as I know, my opponent has never cast a vote in this district. So I feel like the House District 4 can serve someone that knows the district, someone that's lived here, someone that is socialized here, someone that's gone to school here, someone that's worshiped here, and all of those things that are important to the people of House District 4. We talk about term limits, and some of y'all, I know everybody in here is not going to vote for me, and I'm okay with that. As I said earlier, all I ask is that you pray for me. If you don't vote for me, that's okay. I ask for every one of you to vote. If you don't vote for me, I ask you to at least pray for me. Because this is not an easy job. I don't run from it. I think I've done a very good job for the last 18 years. I think being elected majority leader speaks of highly enough of what I've accomplished and what I've been able to do in Columbia to bring people along with me. But I ask that you simply continue to do the right things in House District 4. It's the greatest place in the world to live. I know a lot of y'all were not born and raised here, but you got here as fast as you could. So I'm glad you're here. We're glad you're here. We hope you'll stay here. This is not my seat. I ran 18 years ago against an incumbent. I was fortunate enough to beat him. Been serving ever since. This is not my seat. I don't go down there with an attitude that I can do anything. I go down there with an attitude that I will bring people with me. I will build relationships. I will do everything I can to represent you with honor, with pride, and dignity. You won't read about me on the front page of the newspaper. And so all I ask is that you cast your vote for me on June 14th, but if not, that you'll pray for me. Thank you.
We want to thank Joe, our awesome timekeeper, and Janelle for filming this. She's going to post this on the CO2 website. Is that right?
I have, Facebook disabled me being able to go live, so I'm gonna have to upload it to YouTube.
Okay, we're going to do that. And speaking of praying for these gentlemen, I brought them a little gift. It's a little cliff notes from a really great prayer book called Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire. What happens when God's Spirit invades the hearts of His people? So we're going to give that to them, and yeah. So technically, we're supposed to be gone by 8:30. So if you guys could visit just for a minute, and then we'll say goodnight. So thank you guys all for coming, and good night.